Welcome to episode 69 of In Touch with iOS, a podcast that talks about iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, Apple TV, and related technologies, plus tips, apps, and gear. I am your host, Dave Ginsburg, and welcome back my guest this week, Chuck Joyner from the MacVoices podcast. How are you doing, Chuck?
I'm great, David. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming back. I thought this was a good week for us to really dig into. My gosh, there's so much news to talk about this week. With today is actually release day of the iOS 13 for the iPhone, and lots of other things to talk about. So I'm sure you're excited about this.
Yeah, I'm kind of like you. You know, it's almost where do you start? There's a wealth of information coming out. And you really kind of have to pick and choose as to what's relevant to you, unless you do this as a full-time job, which neither of us do.
Yeah, that as much as I wish I could. It's yeah. So let's dig right into some of the news that caught my eye. I'm gonna open up our first story. First thing it was on Mac Rumors. Xcode was run, and someone confirmed that all the 2019 iPhone phones feature a 4 gigs of RAM. The Series 5 Apple Watch chip is identical to the Series 4, which I found to be interesting. And as this article was written, they weren't sure yet. And I think with the RAM, they were saying that 4 gigabytes was dedicated to the operation of the phone, and then 2 gigabytes was going to be assigned to the camera. But the one that really stood out to me was the fact that the Apple Watch has the exact same chip as the Series 4. What do you think about that?
You know, at some point, I don't want to belittle anybody here, but who cares? I mean, these, and I say that because neither one of these things are things that could be upgraded or changed or, improved upon by the user. And you're not being asked to even make a choice. Do I get my iPhone with 4 gig or 6 gig or 8 gig or 10 gig or whatever?
Right.
Yes, you pick your storage capacity, and kind of the same thing for the watch. Okay, so it's the same chip. Fine. The big feature for this new Series 5 seems to be the always-on display. And so should it really surprise anybody that there's not a new chip?
No, I mean, and that's the thing. And I've talked about it. I talked actually about it last week about really what between the Apple Watch and the iPhone. Actually, you and I talked about it on your show. The Apple Watch, if you already have a Series 4, really, is it going to be any reason to upgrade right at this point? I think you and I both said we're both on the fence, but is there really a reason to upgrade other than, like you said, the always on, which is probably the biggest thing that's available?
Well, if you go back and think about each iteration of, really, if you talk about the watch, the iPhone, the iPad, each iteration has had one killer feature. Yeah. And if that feature was beneficial to you or meant a lot to you, great. If not, then you could skip that year. And I fully confess, it's been a number of years since I skipped a year, especially on the phone. I have skipped a number of versions of the iPad just because the poster features didn't really mean that much to me. The year that they brought out the improved Apple Pencil, for that matter, the first Apple Pencil, it's like, that's nice, but I don't have a use for it, so that's okay. And I think this is the same situation now. If that feature for the watch is important to you, great. And if it's not, then nobody has a gun to your head.
This is true. So yeah, I just thought interesting to see what people always are prowling around and looking at inside of Apple's devices. I guess as we record this on Thursday, the 19th of September, the first folks that'll be getting their iPhones and Apple Watches is in Australia. And our friends at iFixit will be tearing it apart and looking to see what's inside. So I'm interesting to hear what those guys have to say too.
Yeah, I agree, and don't misunderstand. All this stuff is very interesting, and I consume it just like you do, and pour over it, and half the time memorize it when there's showing no need. But at the same time, it's one of those that if I didn't know how much RAM was in there, then I wouldn't think about it. If I didn't know what chip was in, it's sure we're all we're all kind of chip geeks at heart, even though we don't fully understand everything that's going on in there. But it's part of the ecosystem in the echo chamber right now.
Sure is. All right, let's move on to the next story. I caught my eye. This was also on Mac Rumors. There's a class action lawsuit that was filed against Apple for offering refurbished replacement devices under the Apple Care. This was going back July 2016 by customers in California that were actually unhappy with their iPhones and iPads because they were replaced by quote-unquote refurbished devices under the Apple Care policy. Now, I read through some of this, and again, it's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo when it comes to more people trying to sue Apple for things like this, in my opinion. I've replaced my share of devices, whether it be an iPad or an iPhone. I mean, if I remember when I was in Vegas, was it earlier this year, and some wonderful person on the flight decided to knock against my iPad and it fell to the ground. So I brought it in, and they promptly under the Apple Care and the small cost, they replaced it. And I looked at it, and it looked brand new to me. So I'm not sure where this all is going, but I want your thoughts on this.
Okay, so I'm not always popular with some of this. First of all, the phone that you described, David, the one that got bumped and dropped, was a used iPhone. Okay,
right? Because I used it.
Exactly.
iPad.
Or iPad, sorry. So, if I take that in, what is the difference between them repairing that iPad or giving me somebody else's non-pristine iPad that has been much more thoroughly gone over?
100%.
Because there are warranties offered with this. So I think this is just the other part of my opinion is that at this point, anytime you see class action, somebody is manipulating it. Somebody is using this. It's become a sport almost. It's become another source of revenue for law firms that specialize in these things. And, it bothers me a lot that people sign up for this stuff. And at the end of the day, they're not going to get a new iPad or a new iPhone out of this. They're going to get literally a few bucks. And all the money is going to go to the attorneys. And the administration of the issue. And it's going to cost Apple money, and it doesn't make sense. Show me someone that, honest to God, has really been harmed by something, because of serious corporate negligence. And I agree, the corporations need to be punished, but this is not one of those cases.
No, not at all. You and I both have been Apple consumers for a long, long, long time. We've seen the products that we've received when we've had our unfortunate incidents with them, whether it be something that failed under the warranty or something that was caused by us, dropping or damaging it. Honestly, and Apple does all they can to keep. They have to keep a profit in place. So when they take your device, they say, you know what, we're going to replace the camera, or we're going to replace the Wi-Fi chip, or of anything that they can easily replace at the store, they're going to do it. And I don't say I blame them, because why should they be giving you a brand new phone every time you bring it in and say, okay, there's something wrong with it? They don't necessarily have to, but it's all based on the determination of the genius when you speak with them. And hopefully, in most cases, I would hope, if something fails, I'd prefer to have a new phone, so I can be assured that it's not going to happen again in the case of actual manufacturer's defect. But when it comes to damage to the device, whether it be a broken screen or in my case, it was a complete drop and there was just no way of recovering it, they just replaced it based on my Apple Care Plus coverage. It's at their discretion,
Well, there are a couple other factors here. The idea that, okay, I can take my iPad in or my iPhone or whatever in this scenario, and they diagnose that they can't fix it right there on site while you wait. So you're going to walk out of the store and you're going to be without your device for a day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, whatever it takes. And your option is to, okay, we're going to give you a brand new, a refurbished version of what you had. Sometimes it might even be a little bit of an upgrade, but it's still going to be a refurbished version. Okay, so what choice would you make? I mean, I would make great, because now I have something that's under warranty, and it's not going to have been repaired in a rush.
Right.
And I really like that idea. And again, we have seen situations where people get maybe not a brand new model, that is absolutely current, but they may step it up a model or two because they don't have any of exactly your model.
Right.
So, everybody's quick to point out things like this with Apple, but they don't say, gee, I should probably pull some money out of my wallet when you give me that upgrade, under those terms. I just had a situation that is not on point here, but it sort of demonstrates things. I was having trouble with my iPad Pro with the keyboard connecting to it, the keyboard cover.
Yep.
So I went to an Apple store while I was in town and said, hey, any tricks that you know to this? And I was prepared pretty much to buy a new cover.
Right.
And they looked at it, they looked it up and said, oh, there's a recall on this. So we'll give you a new one. Beautiful. And they had to send me to a second Apple store because the first one didn't have it, or they offered to ship it to me. It's like, no, I'll go 4 miles to the next Apple store and pick it up.
Right. Awesome.
Nothing. Didn't cost me a thing.
Yeah. So,
that's the kind of service that Apple does give.
100%.
And I had no idea there was a recall.
Yeah. How would you know? I'd have to, and we both follow the news all the time. So it's
exactly. Part of the lesson I learned is before I go to an Apple store, check the recalls.
Check the recalls. Yeah.
But they could have easily said, no, we're sorry, we can't help you, but we can sell you a new one, and I would have bought it. But they didn't. They handled things in what seems to me to be an Apple way.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the next story, which actually is kind of related to Apple Care. Found this on Tidbits, our friends over at Tidbits. Is your Apple Care Plus expiring? You actually now can renew it. I didn't know that you could do this, as well as, I guess it's new, but I think they may have done this before at some point from what I've been hearing. Basically, if you have an aging iPhone, iPad, or Apple Watch and you want to keep using it and want to be still covered by Apple Care, which may not be a bad idea, especially if it's only a phone that's maybe a year out of warranty. Maybe you want to cover it for one extra year or something like that. You actually can extend the coverage indefinitely on a monthly basis when the plan ends. And the two things you have to keep in mind is the fact that you can't extend the coverage until your existing Apple Care coverage ends. And then once it ends, then you have 60 days to renew the coverage. And Apple will not notify you, that's a key word there, will not notify you that the coverage ends. So you have to be, unless it's by law in your state or wherever you are. And you just got to check to see what your coverage is. And the great thing is that Apple has done a great job of putting that information right in your iPhone or iPad and just look it right up. So what do you think about this? Did they used to do this before? I don't recall them doing this before.
I don't either. I don't know. And I haven't looked into this a whole lot, but I like the idea, and at some point, okay, so let's flip it around. What if Apple were starting to barrage you with, 30, 60, 90 days out? The consumer rights people would be screaming bloody murder, but now because they don't notify you, that's kind of getting sideways looks. But this is a great option, and so tell your phone to remind you in 1 year or what is it, 11 months and 5 days that you need to look into extending it. Yeah. And that's all you need to do. Take a little responsibility for yourself.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't think it's that terribly expensive. If I recall, the costs were right around what they do when you do the monthly option with the new device, which I think was like $5 a month or something like that. Or I'm not quoting exact price, but it could be a little more. But it's still not that terribly expensive. I mean, there's been plenty of times you've especially, I guess we can go back an older device like an iPhone 8. There's still people who absolutely love their iPhone 8s. My wife has her iPhone 8 and she loves it. So, she still has another year warranty left on it, but there are folks out there that've had the older iPhone 8s and right when it expires, something's going to happen. And if you think you're going to keep the phone for a while and you want that option, it's kind of unheard of because go look at other electronic manufacturers like Dell or HP or any of these other companies. And I don't ever recall them doing this. Right now, all I see it is for iPhones, iPads. I don't see it for like Macs or anything like that. So I don't know if you've seen anything.
No, and I think, anytime you're doing something like this, if you get to that point and are contemplating it,
Yeah,
go and take a look on. I know, oh boy, here we go. We're back to the
yeah,
to the last story, but
yeah.
go and look at what you can buy a refurbished one of
First one,
those for,
right?
and then do a little math and figure out whether it works for you.
Yeah, they'll cover you for a year. You know?
Yeah, I mean, some of these devices hold their value extremely well. Others, because things are advancing so fast, it's it's almost embarrassing what they're offering you to
Yeah,
trade some of these in. Apple does a pretty good job. Several other places do, but a lot of them don't. And I know it gives me I still have some Apple devices around the house that I was prepared to sell. And then when I go
yeah,
and it's like, you want to give me $50 for it?
yeah,
I'll keep it as a backup. Yeah.
yeah. Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So,
So
it's good stuff. Then next story I caught my eye was I don't forget you and I talked about this before. When they quoted the word "slofi," I just fell on the floor. I just never ever could think of. I mean, we've always known selfies, and that's been there forever. But a slofi, so because the new iPhone 11 and the Pros have a slow motion feature for selfie mode, because they never had that before, because the camera is a little different in the old models. But yeah, now you actually can take a selfie of yourself. I don't know if I'd ever want to do that. I may not ever want to do it. I might do it just as something amusing. But Apple is now moving to trademark the word selfie. What do you think about that?
I listen. I don't blame them. I mean,
I don't
because
either.
it's unique, and you never know what's going to catch on. And this way, if they're successful, they will own that term. So somebody is going to have to come up with a different term
Yeah.
over on the Android side if they
Right?
decide to try to use that and market it. So it's one of those, like, okay, one of Apple's attorneys can probably handle this, with both hands tied behind their back. Why
Right.
not?
Yeah.
Why not? But I'm like you. It's and I, with all due respect to all the Animoji people out there, this is
Yeah.
one of those things that I'll probably do once, maybe twice, and then that'll be it. But hey, again, you never know what's going to catch on.
Sure.
Better to invest just a little bit of money and protect that than not.
And this story was quoted out of the Mac Observer, our friends over there, and I liked one of the lines. It was Andrew Orr who wrote the article. The short article. He said at least they're not trying to pull an Ohio State University by trying to trademark the word "the"
Yeah.
the Ohio State University. That just doesn't quite cut it. But I think Slofi, they might have a good chance of getting that trademarked.
At the very least, it's a great branding thing right now for this new feature. I mean, whether they are successful or not, they're moving down that path of, if they don't get it, at least it's becoming so associated with the Apple brand that it's going to be hard to break away from it.
Yeah. Next story, also from the Mac Observer. Why does the iPhone 11 Pro have 3 cameras? I kind of wondered that myself at first, but I like this simple explanation. And they basically say on the back of the iPhone 11 Pro, you can find 3 cameras. So why? Because the more light you collect, the better your picture can be. And pretty much they've reached the limit of what one camera can do from when they've had just one camera many years ago. So 2, 3, even dozen cameras could be put to work creating a single photo. Of course, the limitation is software code. I was going to ask you later, but you just I think if I recall, you ordered the 11 Pro. I've got the 11 Pro Max coming. Are you excited about the 3 lenses and see what it can do?
Yeah, yeah. And I thought John Mortavaro did a great job in this
Yeah, you did.
article of explaining this. I mean, I think we all think of these things as cameras, and we kind of forget about except for the keynotes, we forget about the computational photography aspect
Right.
of what the iPhone is doing. And after John takes you through it, it's like, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And almost, okay, so why don't we have just a whole battery of lenses on the back of this camera? Why don't we have multiple cameras in there if there's room for them?
Yep.
And in my mind, a better question is, why aren't the camera manufacturers doing something with this? I know there's software involved and all that, but
Right.
you would think that since they're in that business, that they could create some killer devices that would perform amazingly well, but they're still sticking with one lens and, trying to do things on the chip, and that's it. So.
But even during the demos that occurred during the Apple event a couple weeks ago, is that app Filmic. I can't wait to get my hands on that thing once it gets released out of beta to be able to take 3 separate photos with all 3 lenses at once on the iPhone is just going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, and in hindsight, I may end up regretting that I didn't order the higher capacity phone.
Oh, did you get you 64 or 250?
I got 256.
Oh, okay.
But if you're going to be shooting the video with all cameras, that's going to disappear real quick. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
It could come in handy when you're recording your shows at CES and other venues you do. Who knows?
Believe me, that's going to be one of the first things I'm looking at and thinking, okay, does this change what devices I use and how I use them? I think it's very exciting what we're going to see here. It's
Absolutely.
Just a matter of getting our hands on it and finding out what it can do.
So moving on here, we go back to Mac rumors. Apple's just seeded the 4th beta of iOS 13.1 and iPadOS 13.1 to the developers and the public beta testers. I have some secondary devices, so I had been beta testing it on an iPad Pro 1st gen, and I was also beta testing it on an iPhone within the last couple weeks. I just found this I keep saying to myself, why Apple had released 13.0, which was released today. And then now we have another story that just came out earlier today that they've moved up the release date from September 30th to September 24th, which is, this coming Tuesday. So there is a lot of additional great features that's going to be added. And they've done a lot of things that they were talking about during WWDC, but I know you're not a beta tester, but what did you think about this whole thing with 13.1, 13.0?
Well, David, I can almost argue with myself over this. I like the fact that they said we're going to go with this live date, and we're going to stick with it. We're not going to push it back, because that's another place where the howls would have been, Apple can't hit a delivery date. Yeah. At the same time, it's pretty obvious that there are going to be additional features enabled, but more importantly, there are probably going to be a lot of bug fixes in that 13.1. Oh,
for sure.
And so for the sake of Friday to Tuesday, I think it is.
It is.
I might upgrade my secondary iPhone to 13.0, but I think most likely I'm just going to hang out and watch everybody talk about it and then wait for 13.1.
Yeah. I did put 13.0 on my 10s Max, which of course will no longer be my phone after tomorrow. So, but I did use the final Gold Master version to install it before the actual release was today. Which, interestingly enough, the only way I could install it is because with beta software you use what's called a certificate or a profile to install it, because you have a beta account. In this case, because it was Gold Master, and usually the case you would just be able to just download the file and install it, and it would work. In this case, you had to actually have a Mac running Catalina on it, beta, and then you had to hook the phone up that way, and then of course download the Gold Master full file, and then install it. So I took a risk. I was willing to do it, and it worked. So, so I didn't lose anything, and I got to keep it going. So, but I have been running it since Monday, and we'll talk about that in our topics section here in just a minute. But yeah, I if you have a secondary device, we'll talk, and it is not a bad thing just to check it out and see what's all about. And believe me, I will be doing a lot of comprehensive reviewing of all the different features. I've already got all my notes together, and I know that's what everybody's anxiously waiting to hear about is all the great new features that iOS 13 is going to offer. And then, boy, there's some great stuff available. I can't wait. Don't you think?
Well, there's not only is there great stuff, but there's so much of it. I mean, unlike you, I was going through all the articles that were fogging up my RSS feed today. And they've been dribbling out over the past few months, but all of a sudden they're here and everybody's throwing them at you. And it's like, wow, I almost need to make a list of the things that I want to check out once I do the upgrade. But I'm still not sure I'm going to make that. I'm definitely not going to make the jump right away on my production machine devices.
I took a chance, but I'm also tempted. I'm also tempted. I may just go all out. It's Tuesday. I have the beta account. I can just install away on all my devices and just have at it. I'm not one, and I've had previous guests on my show that like to live on the edge, and they regretted it. So on their primary devices, but when it gets this close to when it's going to be released, I feel pretty confident this is basically pretty much the final code. So, but like I said, I always tell people, if you don't feel comfortable with beta software, don't do it. Plain and simple.
Absolutely. And if you want to have some fun, do it. And if you have a secondary device or an old device that it will work on, by all means, play away. It's great if you have the time and the hardware, but just be aware, as you said, of what can happen, and that you could end up needing a few hours to restore your old device or work through something that if something catastrophic happens. That's all.
Yeah. So then the next article was from Six Colors, a friend, Jason Snell, and he wrote this article about this U1 chip in the iPhone 11 is the beginning of an ultra-wideband revolution. And it wasn't anything that Apple actually talked about. Did you read this article?
I skimmed over this. This and Jason's a friend, and I have a huge amount of respect for him. But whenever anybody says something is the beginning of a revolution, I take it with a grain of salt, because they're this kind of thing. Okay, the chip is great, but there has to be something on the outside to have it work with. So I will watchfully wait. I will root for it, but.
And really what this says, really just I just quoted what it's in the article. It says the new Apple design U1 chip uses ultra-band wide technologies for spatial awareness along the iPhone 11 Pro to understand that its precise location relative to other nearby U1 equipped Apple devices. It's like adding another sense to the iPhone, and it's going to lead to amazing new capabilities. But to hear Jason actually rave about it was I kind of like, threw me back a little. It's like, wow, from Jason to say something like that, this must be something going to be really, really cool. But again, you're right. This is something for the future.
And it right now, I think it's the purview of the geeks, because, just that explanation. Okay, so my phone's going to know where your phone is. Well, okay, that's interesting and might even be a little disturbing. But, I can also see, some kind of interesting, exciting uses for it, but those uses are purely theoretical until they happen. Yeah. So I will watchfully wait.
Yeah, and that's I would as well. The article is linked in the show notes if you want to take a little more detailed look at that. So, and then the other article that was out there was Wi-Fi 6 launched this past week. And of course, this is the new 802.11ax band. Again, another band we got to work with here, and it's going to promise standard, and the standard is going to promise faster speeds, greater efficiency, better performance, higher data rates, increased capacity. And the good thing is, the iPhone 11 and 11 Pro is future-proof for that technology. So all three of the devices have Wi-Fi 6 capabilities, but there's no routers out there to take advantage of that. So what'd you think of this?
Well, see the previous story. I mean, these are exciting things, just like USB 3 was when it was first announced, but you have to have the hardware. And in this case, you have to have, and you're right, we are future proof. So as soon as I get a new router, my iPhone will be able to take advantage of it. But until I get that new router, or, somebody offers me some kind of upgrade, then it's just a technological curiosity. So, I'm happy to see it, because it is something that's going to come. There's no question about that. Yep. And so to see Apple kind of working ahead of the game instead of trying to play catch up is definitely a good thing. But at the moment, it's not impacting any of us.
Yeah, this is true. Well, I think I saw Robert Scoble said he ordered the $400 new Netgear router. I was just saw it on Twitter. It's like, yeah, that's great, Robert. You paid $400 for a router that no device can use yet.
Right.
And but it's new. It's, and I've got the AC. We've all got the AC, and those routers are going to still hold you for quite a while. It will be definitely interesting to see our friend Dave Hamilton to talk about that stuff even more in depth. And he's going to be covering that as these routers come out. And but again, check out that link in the show notes if you want any more detailed information about it. So let's move on to some of the topics of the day. Again, there's not really much we could talk about right now with iOS 13 because as you don't have it installed yet, so you really haven't had a lot of experience using it yet. So it would be unfair for you to give us any opinions yet. But and you told us you're going to wait for the most part on any primary devices, right?
Well, that's the plan. On the primary devices, I pretty much made up my mind. But on some of the secondaries,
Yeah.
I may, if there's time over the weekend, it may be interesting to play with it. And listen, I don't mean to sound like I'm not excited over it. I'm very excited.
I know you are.
And some of the features that are coming, and then when Catalina, did I say that right? No. When the next version of the OS comes out, is that Catalina? Yeah, sure, that's Catalina. I'm getting my OSs confused. When you have the two of them together, for Sidecar, I mean that's really exciting.
I can't wait to. I have not had. Unfortunately, the Mac I have is a 2014, so it does not. It's not compatible to Sidecar, so I have not been able to test yet, and I don't dare put it on my 2019 MacBook Pro I just got in June. So,
yeah.
So I'm still waiting on that to really try it out. But I've talked to others that have been using it on newer hardware, and they're just blown away at what Sidecar can do. And if anyone doesn't know what Sidecar is going to allow you to be able to extend your screen wirelessly from your Mac onto an iPad, and it becomes like a second screen. So you kind of wondered if it's going to put some of these other third-party companies like Luna Display and others out of business, but it doesn't seem like it's going to. They may come around and offer other features that Sidecar may not offer. But that in itself, and Apple really hasn't talked too much about that feature other than they mentioned, of course, during WWDC. So, but yeah, that I think alone is something going to be really exciting.
Well, I think the voice control, all the new, I guess we're talking about iPadOS. If you talk about some of the new text editing gestures, there's just so much in some of these releases that you're going to have to really pay attention. And, so that means, coming to podcasts like this one to, hear about these things and get familiar with them, because not only are you're just not going to even know about them unless you are doing a little bit of studying, let alone how to use them.
Yeah, I've got a long laundry list of things I'm going to be reviewing when iOS 13 is out, and because I'd rather talk about it when people have it in their hands. We can. There's plenty of other people out there that have talked about it already because they were beta testers, but I'd rather you can come back and listen and hear about what these features really do, because many of you will already have it in your hands for a week or 2 weeks depending on when I do the show, but to really be aware of it. The other thing with the iOS updates is WatchOS 6. I did put up WatchOS 6 on my watch, and wow, I'm very impressed with what it does. The one thing that really stood out to me was the decibel measurement, where you actually can turn it on and it tells you how loud it is in your room. And I will warn you that if you're damaging your ears, I'm sure you obviously saw that feature that was demoed during the demos.
And I haven't installed WatchOS 6 just because,
right.
See iOS 13. I figured I'm much more likely to install that in the next day or so. Once everybody else has tried it and there are no major issues. But yeah, these are just, don't want to belittle them. These are iterations on everything that Apple's been doing. Apple has turned the Apple Watch into a health device.
They sure have.
This is just one more capability that has to do with a different aspect of your health. And I'm fascinated by how it has evolved and what they're going to do with it going forward. But yeah, it's great, I don't think I saw a single issue with the upgrade to WatchOS 6.
No, there hasn't been anything. I've had it on it since I think about since Sunday. So since before we record this, and it's been great. There's been no problems other than me being a dummy and not turning on the mode where it unlocks when I turn my iPhone on, because I've been putting the darn passcode in. I'm like, why did I have this set all this time? Because I want to be able to use Apple Pay, and then of course you got to put the code in every time. And what I was thinking. So I just got that turned on the other day. I'm like, oh my god, this is so awesome! Now that I can go to a place and just turn my wrist and use Apple Pay to use my Apple Card to pay for it. So it has really hold out pretty well. So a couple things I will tease and I will talk some of the things you should be aware of as far as upgrading goes. Very important that you do a backup. You want to back up your phone using iCloud. You can back it up in iTunes and Mojave and get a backup that way as well if you so choose to do that. I've always been very comfortable with iCloud and having that backup. Some people may even consider doing a wipe and pave and do a clean install of an iPhone. I haven't done that in quite a few years. Have you done that before on any iOS device?
No, I've pretty much given up on even doing it on the Macs because the migration path is so good. I do advocate trying to clean off apps on Mac, iPhone, iPad, whatever that you're Watch too, that you're definitely not using. Yeah, because it's a good house cleaning time, if you will.
It is,
but I don't feel the need to tear the house down and rebuild it.
Yeah. I know many of our other friends, I won't mention any names, I think you know who I'm talking about, loves to do those clean and paves all the time. I've been tempted to do it, but I agree with you. I just don't want to do it. I love the way everything is set up. And it's not like a Windows machine. Me being in IT and dealing with Windows machines all the time, seeing what I have to do every time I have to reimage a machine for a Windows laptop versus on a Mac, and the settings just stay. I probably have gone at least 4 OSs on my Mac to that way, and it's been the same with iOS. You go back all the way up to iOS 8, from there all the way down to 12 and 13. And I braved it with my iPhone on this one with the backup, so it hasn't been a problem. There are some other third-party services programs I've mentioned, like iMazing. I don't know if you've ever used that before, but
oh yeah.
iMazing is a great program. They're going to be fully compatible to Catalina, which is awesome. So do those kind of backups. But I agree. Going to the worst place of all that everybody's notorious of keeping too many things is in messages. You have so many messages that you've saved, and don't realize you're saving 5, 6, sometimes 10 gigs, even more, of data sitting in your messages folder because you have so many attachments and files and pictures and whatnot. So,
and you know what, David, that's I think something that is really important to understand is because people think, well, it's messages, it's text, how much can there be? And every time that somebody sends you a picture, it goes into that bin, if you will, and stays there. And because I cleaned mine out just I guess a couple weeks ago, and I was a little embarrassed that I hadn't really fully understood that. But what was interesting is I went way back, and the picture sizes are, not unreasonable. The more recent stuff, though, with the new cameras, and these photos are taking up huge amounts of room.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm with you. By all means, do that and save yourself some storage, but it also reduces the potential issues for when you are doing the upgrade to the next OS. Now, so take the pictures, save them, but just be careful.
Something else to look forward to is storage. Apps are going to be about 50% less in size. I've definitely noticed with the beta test and the Gold Master that it's a lot more zippier, faster, and that you're gonna get some more space savings, because that was always been the complaint about how bloated iOS has been over the years. So I think they're for so far what I've experienced, they've hit a home run with this, and that's really what needed to happen. to make it a good thing. And the other thing too is I talked about this before is the fact that they're going to be supporting older devices still, because there's still a lot of iPhone SE fans out there. I just kind of, it's interesting to see why Apple doesn't see that, because I've got friends that love their iPhone SE because they want that nice small screen. They love it. It's a small little phone, but it's still an iPhone, because you can't really find phones that size anymore. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure Apple is in the business of making phones any longer. And I've expressed this before. We call them phones because that's one of their features, and that's the way we think of them. But they're small pocket computers that. Yeah. And how many times have we heard people say, "I never use the phone on my iPhone," and you think, okay, and then what's the point of you having an iPhone? Yeah. Well, the point is that it's an email, social media, camera, specialty use device. That it turns into just almost anything you want it to, right, just by launching an app. And that's the real beauty of the iPhone. And so, the SE, I mean, yeah, I would love to hear from somebody that says they're just delighted with all the technical aspects of the SE. I think you're right. I think they're using the phone part of it as the primary thing. And it's a phone with a nice screen, and it can run some apps that they think are important. But yeah, I don't think Apple necessarily thinks about it as a phone any longer.
True. I mean, but it does still do all the apps. It does all the other things that other iPhones do. The screen may not be as big, but there are plenty out there that just like that small size. It's amazing what people like. But I've tried to talk to friends about this and say, even if you were to get the 11, the 11's a perfectly good, decent sized phone. It's not that terribly big. Obviously, the 11 Pro's got a slightly smaller screen, but it does because of the Retina, the Ultra Retina display. So really, technically, they're both the same size screens if you really think about it. So, but that's about as small as you can get with these phones now. So you're going to have to kind of live with it,
Sure. And well, look, the two of us, you're going for the Max. I'm just going for the regular size because I prefer that for a pants pocket or a breast pocket on a jacket as opposed to having the big one. I had one of the big ones for a while. I think it was the 7, the 7S or 7X or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it, I slid back to the other size, and it's like, yeah, I really like this. And if I want a bigger screen, I pull out an iPad. So I have that option.
But what can I say? I've been on the larger size. I mean, I compromised when the 10 came out, and I had the 10, and the 10 was small. I mean, for me, there was quite a compromise for me from going from a 7 Plus and an 8 Plus to the 10. So the size was quite a bit different. So yeah, I did get the iPhone 10, iPhone 11 Pro Max. I already have my clear case, as you can see here on the camera as I'm showing you. They send this before, so not to get this even more itching, I want my phone. I did get the Apple Clear case. I want to see how this one works. It's always good to get a case to start off with, and then you end up with something a little more heavier duty. Did you get a case for yours?
Oh yeah, the cases, I don't have it. I can't reach it right now, but yeah, it's sitting waiting for my phone to arrive.
No, Stace, you were in the same boat as me. So which one did you get? Did you get the color one?
No, I got one from Spigen.
Oh, you got a different brand. Okay, this is
I did not get an Apple. No, I got one from Spigen. I've had pretty good luck with those, especially as one of the first cases, because everybody's coming out with, it's hard to believe the cases have features, but they really do.
They do.
And so I want to wait until the crop is out there and everything is shipping, and I know what feature is going to be important to me for this phone. And until then, the Spigen is not terribly expensive, but it does provide a decent amount of protection for my brand new phone. So that's been my strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple other topics we had. As I mentioned, we'll have an article in the link of the article in the show notes from the Mac rumors about now. We just talked about Apple is now going to release 13.1 on on September 24th, which is exciting. I think that's a great move on their part. They saw the urgency and seeing how they really got to get this out, because the new phones are going to be out, and the 13.0 is out on the new phones when we get them. So, but 13.1 is going to be released on the 24th of September, which is a couple of short days from as we record this on Tuesday. So, I assume you agree this was a good move.
Yeah, I think so. I just the sooner you can get bug fixes and features into people's hands, the better they're going to like it. And there have been so many leaks and so much discussion about, oh, this is coming later this fall, and people get impatient. It's like, well, why isn't it here now? And that also may be one of the reasons they pushed 13.1 up in release date.
Must have been. Just there's so many bugs that they're trying to iron out, and just let's get to the next gen right off the bat. And again, like I said, if you haven't upgraded already, it doesn't hurt to wait. Just sit tight, wait for Tuesday, and then when you go into your software updates, you'll see 13.1 is available now, and then it'll be one. You only have to do one upgrade as opposed to two. But those of you, there's many out there have been itching to get their hands on this. You may want to jump on it, but you can. It won't hurt anything. But to expect some little bugs here and there.
Yeah, but I want to add one thing, or just reiterate what you said is backup.
Backup, yes.
Get that backup, and it might even behoove you to you can figure out where that file is that is the backup, and then copy that off to yet another hard drive. And just because your phone, just like your Mac, you have it set up the way you want, and you want to be able to restore it the way you want.
Yep.
And so make sure you've got that, and if you have the space somewhere, just archive it for at least a week, a couple weeks.
Absolutely.
And because you can always throw it in the trash, but if you don't have it, you can't get it.
This is true. All right, and then I just wanted to hit on the two services that were announced. Of course, Apple TV, the TV Plus app, of course, comes out on November 1st. I'm going to have a link show notes to the actual support article that Apple published. To be very clear, they did get a lot more descriptive of what devices are eligible to receive the 1 year free service. And of course, we said any iPhone, any iPod Touch, Apple TV 4K, Apple TV HD, or Mac purchased after September 10th. So it would have to be purchased after September 10th in order to be able to qualify for that. And when you and I won't have that problem with our iPhones. So, and of course, being capable of running the latest OS, because it won't run on anything less than iOS 13 or iPadOS. In that case, the same thing with tvOS, but I haven't really said much about that either. I think that's still the 30th of the release of that particular OS, but who knows? You may hear something about that one too on the 24th. They want everything in symmetry so people can start to be ready for TV Plus. So, but that's pretty awesome. And they said even both new and old refurbished models that are purchased at an authorized retailer qualify. So that sounds to me you could buy it at a Best Buy, doesn't it?
I would think. I mean, this is great in so many ways.
Yeah.
Because there's so many questions that are sort of surrounding Apple TV Plus and all the subscription services and their value.
Yep.
And we're hearing more and more about subscription fatigue. There's a new term that we didn't.
We've heard that. I've been hearing that a lot lately.
Yeah. And so this is a way for Apple to give back to its users a little bit, and also maybe get them hooked on it so that. And they've priced it. I mean, I really appreciate the pricing, because the pricing is one of those things that if they've hooked me into just one show, I probably can justify that
right.
cost per month. $9.99, even $6.99, it might be a little more on the bubble. I'm going to have to really like the show at $6.99, and $9.99. I'm going to look at canceling and resubscribing as shows come and go. At $4.99, it's fine. I'm just I won't have that extra burger one afternoon or something, or cut out a latte.
I might have to cancel Apple News just to cover my arcade and Apple TV Plus.
Right, and you and I've had the arcade discussion. That one just doesn't apply to me.
Yeah.
But I've been very careful to pay attention to all the reviews of it, and everybody's coming out and saying they've got so many good games and some great games, and it's so reasonable. And so, maybe Apple is going to capture a segment of the mobile gaming market here in one little swoop.
Yeah, good segue. Just because I want to just mention arcade just briefly. A lot of people have saying, like you said, rave reviews of all the games and how the quality of them are great, and how much fun a lot of them are. You can get it today as we record this on the 19th on your iPhone, because of course the iPad OS is not out yet, so it's not going to be available on the iPad just yet. You could subscribe today and you get a 1 month free trial and to try it out. And if you don't like it, then you just cancel it. But they said up to 100 games are going to be available. Last I heard, only about 59 of them are actually in the store right now. And the thing is too is, here's another thing: if you're a gamer and you want space, you have to download each one of these games for offline use as well as playing them. So that in itself could be taking up some space on your device as well. So think about that when if you've already chosen which device you have, and if you think you're going to be playing a lot of these games, which I would assume you agree with that.
Yeah, and again, with all of this stuff, just like right now, if you download movies or TV shows to your iPad or your iPhone, things take up space, and so think about how you use your device when you go to place your order for your next device. And you may find that all of a sudden that it's more expensive, but it would be nice to have that.
Absolutely. So I think we've covered almost everything we could possibly cover in this week's episode, don't you think? Unless you had any other thoughts before we wrap it up here?
Oh, I've got a lot of thoughts, David, but no, I think we've got to wrap it.
Okay. Tell everybody where they can find you and all that stuff, just because they of course they don't know this, but they need to know.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, you can find MacVoices at MacVoices.com, audio and video podcast, where I talk to really interesting and great guests like David and like a lot of our friends in the Apple sphere. And I also do a Star Trek podcast called Trek Favorites at TrekFavorites.com. And David has also been a guest on that. So you can see various aspects of his personality if you come over to those two sites.
We had two great episodes doing both of that. So go check those out on both cases. But the last Mac Voices you and I did, that was a great episode we had, and we had a good conversation. So that's what's great about Mac Voices, a lot of great conversations.
Well, that's and it's easy when you have great people, and I'm very fortunate, like you are, David, to have a lot of really great friends that are willing to come on and talk. Absolutely.
All right, let's wrap things up here, and that is a wrap for this week. Please send your comments, questions, and suggestions to our email address, feedback@intouchwithios.com. You can follow us on Twitter @intouchwithios, and you can subscribe to us on your favorite podcatcher, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, and we're also on. I just got added on to iHeartRadio, so check that out as well. Or better yet, go to our website at intouchwithios.com, where all the links to all the ways to listen to us are there. I am your host, Dave Ginsburg, and you can find me on Twitter @DaveG65. Again, Chuck, thanks for joining me this week.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.